Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and we didn't go there, and because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going.
Hi, Wendy. I'm Skylar. Can you do a one-finger push-up? Can you show us?
All right, Scott, we'll go ahead and show you what we can do up here, and I'll have Astronaut Joe tell you what I'm doing.
So he's doing the regular two-handed push-ups like you guys would do down there. Oh, he's getting strong. He can do one arm. Can you do one arm? One finger. I see it. No hands. So yes, to answer your question, yes you can. It is fun to be up here.
Now's a good time to also do some push-ups if you want. You look pretty good when you're doing
Can you go
push-ups.
this way?
Yep.
Station Houston on 2, we are ready to begin the change of command event.
All right, well, everyone, welcome on board the International Space Station. Ground team and Thomas that actually got us out the door for that EVA to be successful. In addition, we also accomplished a spacewalk. Getting a repair done on an external MDM. That MDM failed, and we had it repaired within 3 days. Another amazing event by our teams. In addition, Expedition 51 Thomas was able to grapple the Cygnus vehicle, and we unloaded thousands of pounds of cargo and reloaded it with trash during the time frame.
Dirty laundry actually gets incinerated in the atmosphere. And so,
wait a minute, you're kidding? You guys on the space station are throwing your underwear out, your dirty underwear out the window, and it's raining down on us?
And we have accomplished an incredible amount of scientific research during the time of Expedition 51, including my favorite, the osteomics investigation. The European grip and grasp and Mars experiments. U.S.-Russian fluid shifts investigation.
And like every few days, you'd have to get urine in tanks from the Russians, hook it into our system.
Wait, they don't need their own?
No, they actually throw theirs away.
So it's been an incredible time frame for our scientific investigations as well. We are, of course, going to miss Oleg and Thomas. They are exceptional astronauts.
To me, Buzz is flat out saying that we didn't go. Buzz, why haven't we gone back to the moon?
Because we didn't go there. We didn't go there. We didn't go there. And that's the way it happened.
Now, this isn't just some sudden realization. This isn't the evidence. Though I'm glad that Buzz came clean, there is much more information available to show us that outer space is not what we are led to believe. Let's go over a timeline that I made. I tried to keep it as simple as possible. Alright, so in 1915, NACA was founded, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. NACA was established by the federal government, and their mission statement was, "It shall be the duty of the Advisory Committee for Aeronautics to supervise and direct the scientific study of the problems of flight with a view to their practical solution." In 1923, Disney was founded. Walt Disney, of course, grew up in the Demolay, a young boy's version of Masonry. Continuing on, in 1936, JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, was founded, in part by Jack Parsons, an avid follower of Aleister Crowley and a member of his fraternal organization, the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis. Jack Parsons also hung out with L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology, which holds sci-fi-like religious beliefs, including the belief of a galactic dictator named Xenu. Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard both practiced black magic and participated in sex magic rituals together. In 1954, Walt Disney and the father of rocket technology in the United States, Wernher von Braun, meet and make 3 films about space exploration. One was called Man in Space.
Here to introduce you to this new series is Walt Disney.
In our modern world, everywhere we look, we see the influence science has upon our daily lives. Discoveries that were miracles a few short years ago are accepted as commonplace today. Many of the things that seem impossible now will become realities tomorrow.
Just a couple years later, in 1958, NACA is transformed into NASA, and the space program begins with projects like Mercury and Gemini. In 1966, filmmaker Stanley Kubrick meets with NASA employees as well as Arthur C. Clarke. Pretty damning photograph. 3 years before the first moon landing, Kubrick just happens to be running with NASA and a well-known author of science fiction books, who also predicted satellites in 1945. Arthur C. Clarke's work includes Childhood's End, which was made into a 3-part series on Sci-Fi Channel in 2015. Very interesting series with so-called aliens, but they look like the epitome of Satan, and they come to usher in the new golden age for humanity.
There is no need to be afraid.
In 1968, Arthur C. Clarke wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was developed concurrently with Stanley Kubrick's film version. Fun fact, between 1968, when the movie was made, and 2001, when the movie takes place, that is exactly 33 years. They did the exact same thing with 9/11. The Twin Towers began construction in 1968, and they were knocked down in 2001, exactly 33 years later. Anyway, this not only served as practice for Stanley Kubrick, as he was given pointers on how space should be portrayed by Arthur C. Clarke, but this was also mental conditioning for the masses. 2001: A Space Odyssey was the #1 movie in the box office in 1968. And 1 year later, in 1969, Apollo 11 claims to land men on the moon for the first time. President Richard Nixon called Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin from the White House to congratulate them.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz.
I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done. Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here.
Meanwhile, I can't get cell phone service in the mountains here in Colorado. Later on in the same year, Apollo 12 lands men on the moon for the second time. Then in 1971, both Apollo 14 and 15 successfully land men on the moon. In 1972, both Apollo 16 and 17 also successfully land men on the moon. So that's 6 successful moon landings between 1969 and 1972. And it just suddenly stops there. In 1981, Masonic Television, aka MTV, begins, starting right off with the usage of Apollo footage and continuing to use the Apollo program as their theme to further condition the masses on a wide scale, especially the younger generation. Make the Apollo missions cool and hip. Apollo missions, they're the hip thing to do. If MTV wasn't ran out of a Masonic temple, it wouldn't be such a dead giveaway, but they do, and it so happens that many NASA astronauts and employees are Freemasons. Now it's 2018, and nothing has happened since 1972. It's been
Then we have the Challenger crew that allegedly blew up, but a lot of them are still alive. These people have jobs. We found them. They're working as lawyers. They're working in schools. They're alive. How could they be alive if they blew up? I mean, this has been proven over and over again, and people have actually talked to them. But the Freemasons is what's behind it all, with the secret societies. Here's Buzz Aldrin and his lodges that go into Freemasons as well. And then they had another allegedly insider write this book about Hoagland about going to the moon, which is a bunch of baloney. But look at all the lodges these guys belong to. So this from my website, A Plain Truth. It was an article I wrote a couple years back. Freemasons involved since the beginning of NASA. Scottish Rite Freemasons planted a flag on the moon, allegedly. And here's Buzz Aldrin and John Glenn showing their Freemason rings, showing them off. But look at all the lodges, folks. Look at all them belonging to John Glenn, who was a 2-time U.S. Senator. Buzz Aldrin, Montclair Lodge, number 144, New Jersey. Edgar Mitchell, Order of Demolay Mason Artista, Lodge 29 in New Mexico. James Irwin, Tejon Lodge, number 104, Colorado Springs. Don Easel, Luther B. Turner Lodge, Ohio. Gemini 5, Master Mason, Carbondale Lodge 82, was Gordon Cooper. Virgil Grissom, Master Mason from Mitchell Lodge, number 228. 33-degree Mason Carnival Lodge, Walter Sciarra. On and on it goes, folks. And then you have the head of NASA, the guy that was running the Apollo space program, Fred Kleineck, and running the program. And after he got done with a successful TV show, he was granted the head sovereign grand commander of the Council of the 33 degree of the ancient and accepted rite Freemasonry of the Southern Jurisdiction. That's in Washington, D.C., at the top of the pentagram. That's where Albert Pike's tomb is as well, the first Freemason that was founded, one of the first Freemasons, but we'll get into that in a minute. So here you see the rings again. They're showing off that there are Freemasons, and they're telling you the story that they went to the moon and they had this big phallic Apollo penis injecting into Isis, the moon goddess, and it's all very phallic what they show here. And then they have to show their lower levels. This is what they do to the lower levels. They're called the blue levels of Freemasonry, the first levels, and saying, hey, we went to the moon and we're so powerful. We've got the Freemasons. We were on the moon. We're the first ones. That's how cool we are. But it's a secret. So they keep the secret, and then higher up they tell them the Earth's really flat. When they get up above 33 degrees, then they get to play the lies. Like I said, Kenneth Kleineck managed the Apollo program, 33 degrees. This is what he wrote in New Age magazine. He's confirming his astronauts are brother Masons as well. And here's the list of them as well, folks. You can't deny that these are all Freemasons. So easily they could have been in on the Great Lie. And allegedly the Grand Lodge of Texas formed the Tranquility Lodge 2000 on Apollo's landing on the moon. Bullshit. The moon is its own luminary source. You can't land on the moon. So it's just a Freemason shit bowl, excuse me, but it's much deeper than that and been going on much longer. Albert Pike, who's buried in the Scottish Rite Mausoleum in Washington, D.C., he wrote the prophecies, the Pike prophecies, that talks about World War III, that it will take down Islam and Israel and eventually the United States as well. And then you've got Admiral Byrd, another Freemason who was Rockefeller's lap boy, who went down to Antarctica in 1927, brought down 27,000 pieces of documents of what went on down there. Led a couple more journeys down there, Operation High Jump, before he was killed. Shortly thereafter, he came back, Operation High Jump, when they started Operation Deep Freeze and put the Antarctic as a militarized base off limits to anyone and everyone. But as I said, it's all been about Freemasonry and the hidden secrets. This is how they've been able to compartmentalize it and hiding it for so long. Also, the flat earth subject, you go back to Newton, you go back to Copernicus, you go back to all these guys, they all have relations to the Jesuits and the Vatican. It's all connected. So we've connected 500 years of a massive lie that allegedly, why do we still call it a sunrise, folks? Sunset, if we're going around the sun. They couldn't fool the farmers. And look at these photos of the moon. These are original photos. What do they got, a mini me on there on the moon? Look at that leg there. I mean, these are actual photos, they say. And then you got to question, if there's no resistance, there's no friction in space, how could they lift off? What do they push against? Oh, but who took the picture when they're leaving the moon? I mean, give me a break. And then we took over 4,000 photographs people have and photoshopped and showed how they photoshopped the pictures. These are official NASA photos. When they've been photoshopped, showed they've been photoshopped. So how can you deny that? And then the absurdity of this capsule of the lunar module, the LEM, that they crammed inside three guys and fit in there and went for days across space, 238,000 miles in this tiny little capsule, had to change their suits 3 different times, one to flight, one to get on the moon, one to come back on. And then it's just ridiculous that you think about these guys putting on these suits in this tiny little capsule, and then they're heading out and heading back in through the nose cone, because that's how they have to get in and out in order to get into the lunar module to land it on the moon. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then how about the landing? They come in at 22,000 miles an hour and slow and hit impact. They say at 60 miles an hour on their back. 60 miles an hour in the water, you'd break your back, folks. Impossible. In the world, it's all theater. It's all a lie, and the lie's been broken up, and now Buzz Aldrin is confirming it. We have confirmation. They never went to the moon. Plain truth out. Peace. Love one another. Catch you next one.
The science of the Earth, the
government science that's bought and paid for.
So you spin. When you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out. It gets wider in the middle, and so Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. All I'm saying is, when I look at all of it, when I look at the photographic evidence, or I look at the fact that we haven't been back since 1972, when I look at the fact that no humans except the Apollo astronauts have ever gone through the Van Allen radiation belt, the fact that no one's even done a flyby around the moon since then, it seems weird to me. When I look at the press conference and I see Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins nervous and weird and obviously being deceptive after they came back.
You can see on the back of his shirt a couple of upticks on either side where you would expect wires to come in on either side of that harness. They're often portraying that this is live. Of course, these things are fully choreographed and edited in advance to make sure that there's nothing too obvious.
Looks CGI to me.
That gives away that this is a suspension in front of a blue screen hoax. The moon landing stopped in 1972 and we haven't been back. We haven't been beyond the Van Allen belts.
We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space, through the waves of radiation.
No, I could be wrong. It could be real.
There's too many things
It could be real, but they've been faking them so much they look like all those other fake ones. They look like, I've seen so many fake ones that NASA admits that they're CGI composites. There's so many out there. So when you see this one, it's like, this is the same one. There's so much fraud when you look into it. Like, look into it.
They take scientific discoveries that look something like this and turn them into something like this.
The faking of spacewalks in a swimming pool. In this vid, you catch a glimpse of someone wearing a scuba tank. In 2013, a gallon of water leaked into one of their spacesuits in a matter of seconds. NASA doesn't really have a proper explanation for how on earth this could have happened.
Commander Whitson making history with her record for any American. By the time she lands in September, her tally will be 666 days in space.
With the Earth supposedly 23.4 degrees on its axis, and that leaves you, of course, the occultic number, again, 66.6 degrees off.
To look into it.
Well, Earth is supposedly orbiting around the sun at 66,600 miles an hour.
That's so insane!
You haven't looked into it.
However, according to experts, these photographs are much less conclusive than one might think.
Einstein told us that light actually is attracted by gravity. In other words, the path of light is not straight in a strong gravitational field.
We see that one went all the way in. Not quite.
Yeah, that's that zero-G plane that people can take for around $5,000, where you can experience what an astronaut feels when you're falling out of the sky in an airplane and the plane is falling just a little bit faster than you are, and you rise up. And what happens when you do that is your hair often flops about, but it certainly never stands straight up on end, like how the actor nuts on the BSS likes to pretend that their hair just magically stands on end. It doesn't happen. Watch this clip of parabolic flight and see for yourself. Okay, have you seen enough yet? I know I'm drilling this in really hard, but you need to really understand. Hair does not do this or this. It just doesn't do it. It doesn't stand straight up or this. And the reason that they do this is because of the difference between being parabolic and then being non-parabolic. You would notice the change in the hair from hair falling to hair not falling. So to join the gap, they fixate the women's hair to stand straight up all the time. So there would be never any controversy over how the hair appears. It's always standing straight up.
So I guess it's just a one dish at a time sort of thing, huh?
The good part is, like a lot of meals on space station, it tasted fine. It's just you had to eat things individually. But the taste is good. You sort of use your mouth as a bowl and just mix stuff up and eat it. It's not the same, but it's all right. Hey, tell you what, so you can see, you know, what we're facing here in weightlessness. We'll take our asparagus and we'll take it and go rehydrate it, and then you can see what it's like to eat asparagus.
Yeah, Chris Hadfield, why don't you do that? Why don't you fly on up there and show us what it's like to eat in space? Because we're all so anxious to watch you. Watch more trickery.
So,
keep your eye on the spinning ball. Guys, what is one of the first things you ever learned? I always said, the hand is quicker than the eye. Well, in this case, it's true, because all they ever want to do on the space station is have you watch whatever they are spinning in their hands. It's always the same. This show never changes its format.
Asparagus.
They've always got
Ready
some
to eat.
little thing spinning, and they want you to
Cut it
watch.
open.
But I want you to watch something
Floating
else.
scissors
So don't watch what he's doing with his hands. I want you to watch
Very
the top
carefully
right
cut it around the
corner.
outside.
There
and then
is a pair of
ready to eat
scissors.
it by spoon.
They're very motionless right now, but they're there. They're right next to the edge of a blue, something blue that's sticking down. And you just saw the scissors move just a little bit. Keep your eye on those scissors. Don't take your eyes off of them while Chris is cutting open the pack of asparagus and disgustingly licking off those scissors. Keep your eye focused on those scissors and watch the real magic in space happen.
You don't want to load your spoon up too much or the food will fly everywhere. So imagine trying to mix other food in with this when the package is already this full. It really just, it's not possible.
Edit.
And you can't really hold 2 of these or 3 of these at once.
Two
so you kind of
edits.
just need to eat one and then eat another.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Eight.
Pac-Man. Uh-oh. Asparagus explosion.
9. Keep watching those scissors. 10.
Save the
11.
day. One last piece of asparagus, we'll leave it
12.
upside down. Just because we can.
There you go, guys.
That is fascinating.
Okay, next. Here's a bunch of flashy video. See that flash? Flash. That's an edit. Flash. Each time you see a flash, it's an edit. And watch the ridiculousness of her putting water on her hair. Yet no water seems to be going to her hair. It looks to me that the water that she barely squirted out all just drifted away from her. Watch her try to capture it back and wet her hair, but it doesn't happen. And then we're going to see edit. Oh, magic. Look, wet hair. Wow, how did that happen? Amazing. Flash. She's now turned the screen sideways. Shampooing. Got to put that shampoo on that filthy, dirty head. Flash. Now she's facing forward. How is this? What? Flash. Different angle again. Each edit represents the end of a parabolic flight and the beginning of a new one. You see, they can't reposition the actor in the same spot that they were standing in when it all stopped. They just can't start and stop this perfectly every time. So that's why they always have some gimmick to have you watching. This time they really didn't, because she's not using her hands that much. But you see the flashes. Those are edits. And once you start seeing them, they become so crystal clear that you can't stop seeing them. All you see is flash, flash, flash. It just gets ridiculous. But not as ridiculous as the lies that they're spinning to us, making us believe that there's magical ISS in the sky.
The next question from Marcia Dunn at Associated Press.
Marcia Dunn, AP. What was going through your mind? How amazed were you to see your roadster up there with Starman just cruising along with the Blue Planet? And how long will we be getting live views, do you think, from the car?
Well, I think it looks so ridiculous and impossible. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
Hey guys, Paul on the plane here. It's been a while since I've produced an episode of Faking Space, but I'm back today simply to add the SpaceX Tesla Roadster launch last month to our forensic analysis series here in Season 2, because it was another classic example of how a government space agency continues the endeavor of the reinforcement of the heliocentric lie to the government school indoctrinated masses with images and video that was anything but authentic. If you think for 1 second that SpaceX and NASA aren't connected, you better check the facts.
Under our ELV certification agreement, we're undertaking vigorous engineering reviews with the Air Force. To date, we've delivered more than 30,000 data items to the Air Force and provided total access to our internal systems to more than 300 government officials for certification. And we hope to complete that certification this year.
Today I'm just going to highlight a few of the many different problems with the footage and then file it away in our Faking Space series as one more piece of evidence that we are all being lied to. So, let's get started. Number 1 came with the reveal of the Tesla Roadster and Starman in space with this shot. Yep, you've all seen it. Now, I'm not claiming that this proves the car and dummy were filmed in a studio, although in my opinion it absolutely was. But what I want to point out is how the camera reacts to the change in the new background image and the change in the level of light. Watch it again slowly as the top of the SpaceX rocket opens up and how the camera reacts, which reveals undeniably that the camera has two things, autofocus and auto exposure features. The camera is first focused on Starman and the background of the inside of the rocket, or so we are meant to think it's the inside of the Falcon Heavy. But when it opens, the camera is able to focus on the image of the Earth behind it. That's how most cameras operate. That point is secondary, however, to how the camera reacts to the change in light. When the rocket pop-top opens, the flash of bright light we see is because the aperture of the camera was wide open, because the inside of the rocket room the car and dummy were in was very dark. But the aperture quickly closes automatically because of all the light now bombarding the Tesla Roadster directly from the sun and from the sun's reflected light off the Earth, or so we are meant to think that's how it works. The camera auto-adjusts to the new level of light in that instance, and we eventually can see Starman soaring in front of the Earth in all its glory. You can see the autofocus and auto exposure again in this shot with the Earth floating in from left to right. At first it's a big white disk and then the camera adjusts and we can see the image of the Earth, or so they want us to think that's what it is. So now that we've proven the camera has autofocus and auto exposure settings, we can view the rest of the footage with a concrete understanding of what the camera should pick up and what it should not. Like stars. With the camera's aperture wide open inside the dark room, when the rocket first opens, we should see it pick up the stars in the background. After all, we're continually told by the space agencies we don't see the stars in their space footage because of the amount of ambient light coming from the Earth. But with the lens wide open and able to receive all the light from the stars, they don't show up, even for a split second. And when the camera floats around and is pointed into the deep dark blackness of space and the supposed light from the sun and ambient light from the Earth is behind the camera, we don't even see a couple of the brightest stars? You're kidding, right? All you photographers out there should be calling bullshit like I am. Guys, they're faking space. Okay, number 2. I saw quite a few YouTubers pick up on this quickly right after dissecting the footage of Starman floating in front of an image of the Earth. And they are spot on. Watch closely the CGI glitch of the Earth in the background as the Tesla floats in front of it. Did you see it? Watch it again. This time slowly. Now, why is this significant? Because Starman and his red chick magnet of a car didn't glitch. It was only the background of the moving image, meaning it's a layered video feed. If it was a camera glitch, you would see Starman, his Tesla, and the Earth all glitch simultaneously, in the same way, in the same direction, and all recover at the same time. You don't, because it was just one layer of the video suffering this glitch, while the video feed of Starman and his hot ride, the top layer, was consistent. Busted. When are you guys going to start asking yourself why they have to fake all this science fiction garbage if space, as it is presented to us in our government schools and in the mainstream media, is true? Okay, number 3. The last one I'll point out today is the anomaly, I call it, on the Earth image video layer here. Look through the Tesla windshield and you can see the dark spot going from left to right. It looks like a long space turd. Unfortunately, Elon, it looks like a few pixels on your flat screen just went out. I have no idea what that is or why it appeared on the video layer other than it's not supposed to be there because we've never seen a long black turd floating above the clouds in any of the other hundreds of Earth shots we are spoon-fed from the government space agencies, from the Epic Discover, the Himawari, the Electro-L satellites, which give us all these amazing, quote-unquote, photos of the spinning, orbiting space pair. They aren't photos. This channel has debunked that 1,000 times over. Even the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or LRO, and its breathtaking Earthrise shots in all their high-def glory never picked up a giant space turd. So, sorry, Mr. Musk, another CGI fail to add to this pile of crap. The faking of space continues. You are being lied to. But, to many of you watching, Elon said it's real, so it must be. And a lot of people think it's real, so it must be. CNN said it's real. Don't think for yourself. I mean, no one has ever fooled you before, and they certainly aren't now, right? Before I close, props also go out to Bob at Globebusters for his research on the Tesla Roadster's tires and how they would react to not only the vacuum of space, but also to the freezing temperatures in space, if you have enough faith in what they tell you space is like, that is. If you haven't seen that Globebusters episode, check it out. The link is in the description. SpaceX, Starman, a Tesla in space. Hope you guys are all enjoying the show.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly. Like, we'd have way better CGI if it was fake. And you know, the colors all look kind of weird in space. There's no atmospheric occlusion. You know, like everything looks too crisp. But we didn't really test any of those materials for, you know, is it space hardened or whatever, you know. So it just has the same seats that like a normal car has. It's just literally a normal car in space, which I kind of like the absurdity of that. And if you look closely, on the dashboard, there's a tiny roadster with a tiny spaceman. So, because Hot Wheels made a Hot Wheels roadster, and a friend of mine suggested, hey, why don't you put that Hot Wheels roadster with a tiny spaceman on in the car too? Like, that'd be cool.
We're going to talk about NASA's Nikon digital cameras aboard the ISS, the ones they've been supposedly using on spacewalks since the early 2000s. Now, I did have a difficult time finding information on these thermal blankets, these covers that they're wrapping the cameras with when they do spacewalks, and didn't even find any real usable video footage of the cameras being used on those spacewalks. And even still, photographs were hard to find. Searched the internet for them, and the most I could find were medium to low resolution images, and that probably shouldn't surprise anybody. So here's a list of digital cameras that NASA's been using on the ISS. The list from Wikipedia. They're digital cameras. And this is Nikon's press release from August 25th, 2017, stating that NASA has ordered 53 Nikon D5 cameras from them. And if you'll notice in that remark that it says, NASA have not requested any special hardware modifications to any of the 53 cameras in its order. So these are stock cameras, guys. These are actually stock cameras, off-the-shelf cameras that you and I can go buy today. Here's another older document stating the same thing from around 2008, showing the DS3 being used at the time. Again, same thing. It says NASA uses off-the-shelf DSLR gear, and you can see the red underline line right there. Same stuff going on. So a few things to consider, as you'll see in this photo of the astronaut holding the camera. Notice the lens is bare and exposed to space. It's a Nikon 28mm AFD. It's made of plastic, glass, metal internals, and some rubber grip rings around the barrel. Here's a closer shot of the rubber ring for manual focusing. And you can see that the lens has kind of a plasticky look and doesn't look like something that would be hardened for space, that's for sure. In these particular photos here, we can see the thermal blanket on display showing a little more detail on how the cover looks and wraps around the camera. I came across this particular article in Popular Photography magazine, published July 27th, 2011, and it states, the thermal blanket protects the equipment from the temperature extremes during the EVA. If you look down lower, it says, typically tend to keep touch temperatures between 120 degrees Celsius and negative 129 degrees Celsius. Now, there was actually a link within this. I could not click the link and get it to go anywhere. It just went to a dead page on NASA's site. So the link for the PDF on explanation of the thermal blanket is now gone. It's been removed. So not really sure what's going on there, but I could find nothing on that now. Now let's hear what NASA has to say about the operating environment in space.
We expect to have spacewalks during my ISS mission. One of the neatest things about the spacewalks is when you're in the sun, it's about plus 100, 250 degrees. So it's really hot. And so we have thermal covers, we protect all our equipment, metal gets really hot to touch. But as soon as that equipment goes into the shade, either the sun sets or you block it, or it's just shaded by space station, it goes to minus 250 degrees. So the coldness of space. So literally, you could have your hand at 250, plus 250 here, put it in shade, it's at minus 250. So that's what makes our spacesuits so amazing. They can protect us and keep us comfortable in those radical temperature changes.
Okay, so we just heard that the operating environment in space is extremely harsh, roughly a 500-degree difference between the sun and the shade. Now let's take a look at the astronaut spacesuits. They consist of multiple layers of protection and even include a heating and cooling system to keep them comfortable and safe while on spacewalks. Now let's see what Nikon recommends for the camera's operating environment. 0 to 40 degrees Celsius or 32 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, these cameras can operate well beyond these temps, but it's not recommended and adverse results can occur, including battery and electronic failures and slowdowns. So NASA says the thermal blanket is made of Mylar, Kevlar, and aluminum. It's said to provide protection from negative 100 to 150 degrees Celsius. It says nothing about radiation protection, which is kind of odd. And it apparently costs $20,000, so very, very expensive. In my research, I could only find variants of the claimed material that NASA says they use to make the covers, and all of them have kind of a shine or a sheen to them. So take a look at this sample of Kevlar and aluminum material that I found. The aluminum backing is very shiny and something that cannot be seen on the existing blanket / wrap that you see of the camera. If you can find this magic material, please send me a link. I'd like to see it. The other thing that stood out to me was a rather standard looking Velcro, also known as hook and loop. I did some checking, and the high heat rated Velcros are only good to about 200 degrees, maybe just a little bit warmer than that. You'll also notice the fabric doesn't appear to have any other layers like aluminum, Mylar, or anything else, within them. So it just kind of looks like a canvas type material with sewn on Velcro strips. You be the judge there. So here's an example of standard Velcro, and it pretty much looks identical to the stuff that's used on the thermal cover. And again, it's my opinion, but it looks pretty much the same. So moving on from the extreme temperatures of space and what effects those alone will have with off-the-shelf cameras and lenses, what about the effects of cosmic radiation on standard off-the-shelf camera bodies and lenses? I found this article from Tested Magazine dated May 21st, 2013, and it actually states the following. The prosumer-grade cameras used on the International Space Station aren't heavily modified for use in space. Now, they've been certified with rigorous testing, but that's the same stuff we get down here on the Earth. So they're actually not shielded from cosmic radiation that exists on both the outside and inside of the station. So you're going to see some damage done, and that's from their own quote on the interview from Tested Magazine. So you're going to start seeing dead pixels. Now let's see what our astronaut buddy Don Pettit has to say about cosmic rays and how it affects electronic equipment aboard the ISS. I found this article from his blog, and it says, free from protection offered by the atmosphere, cosmic rays bombard us within the space station, penetrating the hull almost as if it were not there. They zap everything inside, causing such mischief as locking up our laptop computers and knocking pixels out of whack in our cameras. They have to reboot the computers periodically from what he states here. So what does that also include with rebooting? Well, a camera has computers inside it. So the Nikon cameras they're using up there have computers in them. They're going to be affected just like the other computers aboard, and possibly even worse since they're being used out in space without any additional protection. So just a few things to consider there. In the following video, Rad Solutions demonstrates the effects of radiation on a commercial video camera, simulating high altitude and space scenarios. A link to the full YouTube video will be in the description below. As you can see from this test, the video camera sensor and electronics begin to suffer the effects of radiation pretty quickly, and ultimately it creates total camera failure. So yes, you can argue the thermal blanket provides little protection from the extreme temperatures of space, but I still don't think the cameras would work for much more than, say, 10 to 15 minutes before the electronics fail or the battery is too cold to function properly. The thermal blanket simply is not like the environmentally controlled spacesuit with heating, cooling, and radiation protection. It's just some high heat resistant fabric wrapped around the camera and does nothing more. So draw your own conclusions, but I think logical thinking and analysis of the thermal blanket, that cover, provides plenty of evidence that this magic cover is BS, nothing more. Okay, last but not least, I decided to include a few photos of the early spacewalks. They proved to be interesting as well. Let's take a look at the exposed camera in the photo. You'll notice that it's bare metal with no protection of any kind. The film being used in these cameras would not only suffer from heat damage, but also suffer from the effects of radiation, causing possible fogging, streaks, color shifts, lack of contrast, just to name a few.
Everything about making the film was different to how films have been made before. You know, with so much of the film created in the computer, a lot of the cinematography was going to be executed within the computer. So we had to work very closely together with the other departments, you know, whether it's production design or cinematography, to develop the new ways of making the film.
This was easily the most challenging job that Framestore has ever done. I think part of the reason that people wanted to be involved was because the director was so involved and so present here. We were really lucky to have so many great artists involved. There were a lot of moments where we weren't sure how or even if we could do what was being asked of us. We were really bringing the entire film to life, so it was an easy film to feel really connected to feel like you were a part of.
I think that's something we could probably take from this experience, and hopefully other productions are looking at this from the same angle. But Gravity is a special case.
Just over 45 years, and that's a lot of time to be stagnant after 6 back-to-back moon landings. Get this, not only did NASA lose the telemetry data for all the moon landings, but NASA now claims that they lost the technology that got them to the moon in the first place.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
This is why we can't go past low Earth orbit, according to them.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
And this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit.
But I have a hunch as to why we can't leave low Earth orbit. Dome, da dome, dome. Dome, 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 dome. Yeah, so they have conceived this idea of a layer of radiation that acts as an impenetrable barrier. It's called the Van Allen radiation belt, and it's code for the firmament. Another thing is that this radiation belt was present for the Apollo missions, so how did they manage to make it through? Let's ask Apollo astronaut Alan Bean.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No, now I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
Beginning at an altitude of 1,000 miles and extending an additional 25,000 miles, lay lethal bands of radiation called the Van Allen radiation belts. Every space mission in history with humans on board, from both the United States and Soviet Union, from the first in 1961 to the present, has been well below this deadly radiation field. Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, the Space Shuttle, all maintained altitudes well below 1,000 miles. All except Apollo.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt, and if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works. You study to see what the threats are, the environment is, and then you say, how thick do I have to make the metal on the spacecraft so that going through this kind of radiation or these kind of meteoroids, it won't get hurt. And so then we build it that way.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Then we went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
Didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
So you see, Team Apollo didn't know about this deadly radiation belt that would have killed them, so they weren't affected by it. Another interesting aspect of space travel is that it's not possible because thrust and combustion are not viable in a vacuum. Let's review a couple of experiments in a vacuum chamber that prove what I am talking about. First experiment, thrust in a vacuum.
You see when I turn the fan on, it blows the feather all over the place. This is, of course, at atmospheric pressure right now. So since we're at Martian air pressure, let's unplug the vacuum pump and let's turn on this fan. Place your bets as to what's going to happen to this feather. Now the fan's only going to produce maybe 10 miles per hour worth of wind. On the surface of Mars, the fastest recorded wind speed is about 70 miles an hour. But let's say the superstorm in the Martian had wind speeds of 200 miles an hour, 20 times what we have here. To compensate for that, I imagine the feather is about 20 times easier to push over than a spaceship. So let's see what happens. Okay, fans on. And the feather's not moving. In fact, let's zoom in on that.
Thrust does not work in a vacuum, and thrust would be needed to traverse outer space. Second experiment, combustion in a vacuum.
This is a mixture of sugar, potassium nitrate, and iron oxide. This is used in amateur rockets because the ingredients are readily available and the amount of thrust it produces is quite high. So let's light this on fire and see how it does. So this is in Earth atmosphere. As you can see, it burns rather rapidly, producing a little bit of thrust even. As you can see towards the end, it moved it around. So now let's try it inside of a vacuum. No ignition. That's interesting.
Combustion does not work in a vacuum. This is a very big deal. Space travel falls on its face and breaks it, then dies with these two vacuum chamber experiments. Thanks, Cody's lab. Outer space is an occultist dream. In the same way that Jack Parsons was obsessed with magic, so too was Walt Disney. You can see it throughout his work with the likes of Fantasia, and you can still see it to this day with how they advertise for Disney.
With Disney innovation and magic behind them, Disney DVDs are breathtaking, fun, interactive. A world filled with magical entertainment awaits you. The magic is at your fingertips. Disney DVD. Pure digital magic.
Welcome to a whole new world of Disney magic. Pure digital magic.
The magic of Disney this, the magic of Disney that, the Magic Kingdom. They even have a Disney cruise ship called Magic. And just like Jack Parsons, Walt Disney was fascinated by rockets. which in the occult circles are modern-day obelisks. Obelisks are erected all over the Earth plane, and they symbolize domination, power, and political authority. The word obelisk translates to Baal's shaft, Baal as in the god or lord. Therefore, an obelisk is a penis. Speaking of penises, in the movie Toy Story, Woody and Buzz come into contact with references to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. You can see it here on the carpet. It's the same carpet from The Shining, and they did this on purpose. There's a reference to room 237 when Woody is using the computer. Another one on the garbage truck license plate. And another on the cameras in the daycare center. This one even says Overlook, the hotel that The Shining took place in. The Shining was Stanley Kubrick's way of saying that he filmed the moon landings. In the movie, there are references to Tang, the drink that the astronauts took to the moon.
Astronauts to the moon.
Little Danny wearing an Apollo 11 sweater and heading for room 237. Another funny thing about Toy Story is that Tom Hanks plays Woody, and the year it came out is the same year that Apollo 13 came out, with Tom Hanks as the lead. And Tom Hanks also was the executive producer, meaning that he was the main producer behind a project for a 1998 miniseries called From the Earth to the Moon. It's pretty clear that Disney and NASA are connected.
Buzz, I can't believe you were actually in space!
Yeah, it's true. I was the first space ranger to visit the International Space Station.
Way to go, Buzzarino!
Let me show you.
It was a fantastic program between NASA and Disney to send Buzz up and did a tremendous education program, you know, for children all over the world, and I was so proud.
So when you're looking at this timeline, this is the timeline of deception with the space programs of the world, pretending like outer space is a real thing. And you can add in 1928, Richard E. Byrd started exploring Antarctica. And he explored it for years and years and years. And in 1956 was his last expedition to Antarctica. So we can add those two things to the timeline. And just 3 years after Richard Byrd's last expedition to Antarctica, the Antarctic Treaty was established in 1959. Just 1 year after NASA was founded. So when you really look at this and pay attention to all this stuff as a whole, you can see that we're being lied to. It seems that they have found the limitations for how far we can travel on this Earth plane and how high we can go in the sky. But don't just take my word for it. I want you to research this. Whether you believe me or you don't believe me, research it for yourself. It becomes very clear that something is going on with the establishment of the Antarctic Treaty right around the time NASA was founded to gatekeep space. It's all there. Just do your own research. Anyway, that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. I'm gone.
Trouble in space this morning as the International Space Crew attempted a spacewalk outside the station. Here's a live look at the astronauts. Well, I don't believe. I don't think those are astronauts. Yeah,
Where's their spacesuit?
My question is, through your career and your writing and your acting, you've inspired so many people to enter the sciences. How do you balance science with science fiction? They're both the same.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Wow, Neil Armstrong. Hey, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Oh, there's a tape delay and with all solar winds.
She always loved the pictures.
It's an old federal textbook. We've replaced them with the corrected versions,
Corrected.
explaining how the Apollo missions were fake.
Folks, it's an honor for me to be working in this studio. This is the very sound stage where we faked the moon landing. And the JFK assassination. No, I'm sorry, this is where we planned the JFK assassination.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.